I remember the first time I saw her. A little girl with tangled curls, chasing a red balloon across a public park, giggling so loudly it made everyone glance her way. She was holding tightly onto her mother's hand, like that was the only thing keeping her grounded. That was the day I met Haley, and in a way, that was the day I met my future. Melissa, her mother, was warm, a little guarded, but strong. She told me early on, "It's not just me you'd be dating." And I respected that. She was a single mom, abandoned by her ex, Bradley, when Haley was just a toddler. He left with promises of figuring things out, and never really came back. Melissa had done everything on her own since. I didn't come in trying to be anyone's savior. I just wanted to be part of something real. I never expected to fall so deeply for that little girl with wide eyes and scraped knees. At first, Haley called me Mr. Dan. It was cute too formal, but soft. I'd pick her up from school sometimes, and she'd wave to me from the classroom window like I was the highlight of her day. When Melissa had to work late, I'd help with bedtime routines. Brush teeth. Read a story. Tuck her in. I didn't mind. One night, after a particularly exhausting bedtime battle over broccoli, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Good night, Dad." Then she froze, like she'd said something wrong. But I didn't correct her. I just said it back. That night, I cried in the hallway when Melissa wasn't looking. I married Melissa a year later. Haley was the flower girl. She kept calling herself our special kid that day, and I couldn't argue. She was. Bradley would pop in randomly, usually around holidays or when he had a new girlfriend to impress. He'd bring her cheap toys, sometimes not age-appropriate, like a karaoke machine when she was 6. He'd ruffle her hair, call her princess, then disappear for months. Haley would get so excited to see him, and then so broken when he ghosted her again. I never badmouthed him. Not once. I didn't want to be the reason she stopped believing in her father. But I did everything I could to make sure she felt secure, loved, stable. When she learned to ride her bike, I ran alongside her for hours until she didn't need me anymore. When she had the flu and cried in the middle of the night, I was the one who rocked her back to sleep. Her first spelling bee? I made flashcards. Her first heartbreak? I sat beside her on the porch, passing her tissues and letting her rant for hours. And through all that, she started calling me Dad without hesitation. In her drawings, in birthday cards, on Father's Day. Each one felt like a trophy I didn't ask for but earned. Bradley? He stayed a myth. He'd pop up now and then with wild ideas, "Let's go to Disney next year," or "I'll get you that phone for your birthday." None of it ever happened. I'd be the one paying for the field trip, the braces, the prom dress. And honestly, I didn't mind. When Haley graduated high school, she ran into my arms, cap crooked on her head, mascara streaked from happy tears. "I couldn't have done this without you, Dad," she whispered. That moment, I'll never forget it. Every sacrifice I'd made felt worth it. I helped her with college too, tuition, books, even a small off-campus apartment. Melissa and I had to cut back on vacations and push off our kitchen remodel, but I didn't care. Haley was chasing her dreams. That's what mattered. Through all those years, Bradley never offered more than a voicemail and vague encouragement. "Your dad's proud of you," he'd say over the phone. But he never sent a check. Never visited campus. He existed more in theory than in presence. Still, I never tried to erase him from her life. I let her bring up his name without flinching. I thought that would be enough to show her what real love looked like. I thought I had earned my place. But I would soon learn that love, real love, can be invisible when biology stands in the way. That realization didn't come as a sudden storm. It was more like a slow leak. A feeling that started small and quiet, barely noticeable, but grew into something I couldn't ignore. It started when Haley got engaged to Jason. We were thrilled. Melissa practically danced around the kitchen when Haley called. I congratulated her, hugged her, and, deep inside, hoped I'd get to walk her down the aisle. Not because I demanded it, but because I believed that moment belonged to us. I imagined us standing together before the ceremony. Me adjusting her veil, her looking at me with those big eyes, saying, "Ready, Dad?" The same way she had said it before every major life moment. I didn't voice it aloud. I didn't want to make it about me. But I hoped. When the wedding plans rolled out, I offered to help. I paid for part of the venue, helped Melissa with flowers, even pitched in for Haley's dress. Every conversation with her was filled with excitement, colors, music, cake flavors. She was radiant. Then the invitation arrived. I remember standing at the kitchen counter, coffee in one hand, flipping the envelope open with the other. I smiled, expecting to see something sweet. Maybe a note. Maybe my name in a special spot. But it was just a formal card. Names, times, dress code. My name? Listed with other guests. And under who will walk the bride down the aisle. Bradley Carter. I stared at it for a long time. As if the ink would change if I looked hard enough. My hand trembled. Not from anger. But from something deeper, like someone had quietly erased me from the page of a story I helped write. I walked into the living room, invitation still in my hand. Melissa looked up and asked, "What's wrong?" I couldn't speak. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. Sometimes, love isn't enough to earn the title you've already been living. The day I asked Haley about the invitation is one I replay in my mind more often than I should. We were at her favorite little cafe downtown, sunny corner table, almond croissant, iced matcha. She was scrolling through centerpiece designs on her phone, excitedly chatting about floral arrangements and whether she should go with an indoor arch or a garden backdrop. I waited until she paused for a sip. "Hey, Haley," I said gently, sliding the wedding invite across the table. "I got this yesterday." She smiled, not sensing anything wrong. "Cute, right? Jason's cousin designed it for us." I nodded. "It's nice. I noticed Bradley's walking you down the aisle." Her expression shifted, but only slightly, like she had expected this would come up, but hadn't thought it'd matter. She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear and said it so casually, I wasn't sure I heard her right. "Well, yeah. I mean, he's my biological dad. I've always imagined him walking me, you know?" She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like it didn't negate everything I'd been for her. Like I hadn't held her hand through every storm her biological father caused. I didn't speak right away. I was afraid of what might come out. So, I said slowly, after all these years, after everything, it just made more sense to choose him. She gave me a soft look, as if I were a child who just didn't get it. "It's not about you, Dad. It's just, this one moment, I wanted it with him. It's symbolic, you know? Symbolic." The word echoed in my head long after she changed the subject. To her, he was symbolic. But what was I? A substitute? A placeholder until the real thing came around? I nodded, pretended to understand, and left the cafe feeling like something had cracked inside me. Still, I showed up on her wedding day. Tailored suit. Clean-shaven. Smile practiced in the mirror. I arrived early and took my seat among the other guests, clutching the gift Melissa and I had picked together, a vintage tea set she'd always wanted, plus a check for more than we could comfortably afford. I watched Bradley walk Haley down the aisle, her arm hooked in his like it had always been that way. The guests smiled. Cameras flashed. She looked beautiful, absolutely breathtaking. But to me, it was a strange kind of beauty, one that hurt to look at. Not once did she glance my way. Not when she reached the altar. Not during the vows. Not during the speeches. And God knows, I waited during those speeches. I thought maybe Jason would say something. Maybe Haley would give me a mention. Just a thank you. A nod. A line. Anything. But there was nothing. I was invisible. I sat there through the reception, watching everyone dance, eat, laugh. Melissa tried to cheer me up with polite conversation and wine, but I wasn't really there anymore. Somewhere between Bradley's speech and the bouquet toss, something in me just broke. I had spent 2 decades being the one who showed up. The one who stayed. The one who filled in the blanks left by a man who couldn't bother to call on her birthday. And now, here I was, watching that man take a bow for a role I had played in full. When the dancing started, I stepped out. No goodbyes. No scene. Just a quiet exit through the back gate of the venue. I didn't even tell Melissa. She didn't notice I was gone until later that night. Back home, I sat on the couch in the dark, the suit still clinging to me like a costume I forgot to take off. The silence was loud, almost cruel. I thought about Haley's childhood drawings, stick figures of her and me holding hands, labeled me and Dad. I thought about the birthdays I planned, the late-night math homework, the pep talks before college interviews. I thought about how many times she had cried on my shoulder when Bradley didn't show up. And I thought about how easily she had erased all of that. The next morning, Melissa was angry. "Why'd you leave?" she asked as she poured herself coffee. "I didn't belong there," I replied simply. "Daniel, it was her wedding. You couldn't just disappear like that." "No, Melissa. She disappeared. Long before yesterday." She rolled her eyes. "This isn't about you. It was one moment. She just wanted her father, her real father, to have it." I stared at her. "And I was what, all these years? A rental?" Melissa said nothing. In the days that followed, I withdrew. From Haley. From Melissa. From everything. I didn't know how to feel, except hollow. Then Haley called. She was back from her honeymoon. "Dad," she said with that bright voice. "It was amazing. You should have seen the resort. Jason planned a dinner under the stars. It was so romantic." I listened. Nodded. Mumbled "that's great" a few times. Then she added, almost like an afterthought, "So, there were a few extra charges, and we're a little short. Could you maybe help us out? Just a bit?" I laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just in disbelief. She had no idea. "No," I said gently. "Not this time." Silence. "But you've always helped. I think it's time you asked Bradley. He's your father, right?" Another long pause. "I understand," she said quietly. And that was it. The call ended. I sat for a long time, staring at the blank screen. My hands trembled, not from sadness, but something sharper, resolution. I had finally said no. And for the first time in years, it felt like I had drawn a line between love and self-sacrifice. Because what they don't tell you is that even unconditional love needs to be seen. Needs to be chosen. And I was done loving people who only remembered me when they needed saving. After that call with Haley, the house felt colder. Not physically, our heater worked just fine, but emotionally, something shifted. The kind of silence that seeps into your bones and wraps around your thoughts like a fog. Melissa noticed it too. She wasn't one to pry, but she didn't have to. She'd lived with me long enough to know when I was unraveling. "You still haven't talked to her?" she asked over dinner a few nights later. I shook my head. Melissa sighed, long, heavy, tired. "She didn't mean to hurt you, Dan." I didn't reply right away. I just kept cutting into my overcooked chicken, pretending the knife wasn't shaking in my hand. She chose him, Mel. In front of everyone. And then asked me to clean up the mess afterward, like nothing happened. Melissa leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. She was caught in a moment. It was her wedding. Emotions were high. You've always been the stable one. The one she knows will be there. Maybe she just assumed. She assumed I'd keep giving, no matter what, I interrupted, my voice lower now. That I'd take the hit and still smile. Still pick up the phone. Still pay the bill. Melissa's eyes softened, but there was something else behind them, something colder. She's still your daughter. Is she? I asked, instantly regretting the sharpness in my tone. Because lately, it feels like I was just the guy who filled in when her real dad bailed. Dan. No, Mel. I'm tired of pretending that didn't hurt. We didn't speak the rest of the meal. She cleared the plates in silence, and I stayed at the table, watching the last of the wine swirl in my glass like it held answers. That night, she turned her back to me in bed. No goodnight kiss. No soft touch on the arm like she used to do. Just silence. Again. Days turned into weeks. And the silence became routine. I'd leave early for work, come home late, and we'd pass each other like strangers sharing rent. No arguments. No screaming. Just absence. Then one evening, Melissa walked in from the grocery store, her arms full of bags and her face stormy. She and Jason got evicted, she said flatly, setting down a carton of milk with a louder thud than necessary. I blinked. What? They couldn't keep up with rent. I told you they were struggling. Now they're living with his mother. I nodded slowly, waiting for what I knew was coming. She's sleeping on a pull-out couch in a one-bedroom apartment, Dan. Is that what you wanted? No, I said calmly. It's what she chose. Melissa narrowed her eyes. Don't act like this doesn't hurt you. You loved her like your own. I looked up at her, meeting her gaze for the first time in days. Exactly. I loved her like my own. But she didn't love me like a father. Not when it mattered. Melissa's lips quivered, but she said nothing. She just picked up the groceries and walked out of the room. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed again. I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying old memories like reruns of a show I used to love, Haley's first Christmas with me, her 6th grade play, the way she hugged me when she got into college. What do you do with love that has nowhere to go? A week later, I got a text. Not from Haley. From Jason. Hi, Mr. Grant. I know this is awkward, but could we talk? It's important. I stared at the message for a long time, debating whether to reply. Eventually, curiosity won out. We met at a local cafe. Same corner table Haley loved. He was already there when I arrived, fidgeting with a napkin, eyes flicking to the door every few seconds. Thanks for coming, he said, forcing a smile. I nodded. What's going on? Jason looked down, cleared his throat. We're in a bad spot. I lost my job. Haley's been trying to pick up hours, but it's not enough. We're behind on everything. And I know you've done a lot, but... He trailed off, letting the silence do the begging. You want money, I said bluntly. He flinched. I didn't want to put it that way. But yes. We need help. I stirred my coffee slowly. Have you asked Bradley? Jason blinked, caught off guard. Bradley? No. Haley thought maybe you. I laughed softly, bitter, not amused. Of course she did. Look, I know things got messy, Jason said. But this isn't just about her. It's about us. About keeping a roof over our heads. I leaned in. Jason, let me ask you something. When she made her wedding plans, when she picked the man to walk her down the aisle, was I even considered? Jason looked uncomfortable. She said, it was always going to be her real dad. Right, I nodded. And now that the symbolic father is gone, the one who's always been there is supposed to step in again? Jason didn't answer. I stood up. Tell Haley I wish her well. But I'm done being the safety net. And with that, I walked out. Melissa was waiting for me when I got home, arms crossed, jaw tight. You met with Jason, she said. It wasn't a question. I did, I said. And I told him no. Her eyes filled with disbelief. You just let them sink? After everything? They made their choices, Mel, I replied quietly. It's time they live with them. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just turned away and walked up the stairs without another word. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. Not mine and Melissa's, but Haley's. She was glowing. Radiant. Hooked into Bradley's arm like they'd never been apart. I was in the background, blurred, forgotten. And I realized something I should have known long ago. Sometimes, the people you raise will still choose the ones who walked away, just because they share the same blood. And the ones who stayed? We're left learning how to let go, quietly, painfully, and without applause. The distance between Melissa and me wasn't measured in arguments or slammed doors, it was in glances that didn't meet, meals eaten in silence, and the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hallway when I came home. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it would pass. That we just needed time to cool down. But the weeks went on, and nothing changed. If anything, the silence grew heavier. What no one tells you is that indifference is far crueler than anger. She no longer asked me how my day was. I stopped asking about hers. Our marriage became two parallel lives held together by shared bills and leftover wedding vows. And in the middle of that numbness, someone else stepped in. Claire. Melissa's best friend. Claire had always been part of our circle, around for holidays, birthdays, family BBQs. She was lively, funny, the kind of person who filled a room just by walking into it. Haley adored her growing up. Melissa called her my ride or die. After the wedding, Claire started calling more. Checking in on Melissa, but staying on the line to chat with me too. At first, I thought she was just trying to patch things up between us. Maybe she sensed the shift, like everyone else did, and wanted to help. But then her questions got more personal. Are you okay, Dan? You don't sound like yourself. Do you feel seen in your own house anymore? Don't you think you deserve more than this silence? They weren't flirtatious. Not at first. They were sincere. Thoughtful. But they cracked something open inside me. Something I had kept locked away for months. We started meeting for coffee under the pretense of catching up. It felt harmless. Familiar. She listened without judgment. Told me I wasn't crazy for feeling forgotten. For feeling unappreciated. And then one night, I told her everything. We were sitting in her living room, 2 glasses of wine between us, and the soft hum of jazz playing from a speaker in the background. I told her about the wedding. About Haley choosing Bradley. About how Melissa never once stood up for me. I told her how I'd given everything I had, emotionally, financially, physically, and how no one had ever looked back to say, "You matter." When I finished, there was a long silence. Claire set her wineglass down and looked at me, not with pity, but something gentler. Understanding. "You're not wrong for feeling this way," she said softly. "You just want to be seen. That's not a crime, Dan." And maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the weight of years spent being invisible. But when she reached out and put her hand on mine, I didn't pull away. I should have. God, I should have. But I didn't. The next thing I knew, we were kissing. Not a heat of the moment, reckless kind of kiss, but one of aching. Of 2 people who had spent too long pretending they were fine. That night, I didn't go home. We talked for hours, really talked. I told her things I hadn't said out loud in years. She held space for all of it, never flinching, never dismissing. For the first time in a long time, I felt human. I didn't love Claire. At least not in the way I once loved Melissa. But I loved being seen. Being heard. And that night, that's all it took. The guilt came later. In the quiet drive home the next morning. In the way Melissa looked at me when I walked through the door, eyes tired, face unreadable. She didn't ask where I had been. She didn't have to. She already knew. She started noticing the phone calls. The messages. The late returns home. I wasn't good at hiding things, I never had been. But she didn't confront me. Not yet. Claire, for her part, struggled too. We both knew this wasn't sustainable. That it wasn't right. But somehow, in the ruins of everything else, we found comfort in each other's brokenness. Do you regret it? She asked me one night. I paused. I regret that it came to this. But I don't regret being with someone who made me feel real again. That answer haunted me more than I expected. At home, Melissa and I were ghosts. The woman I once fell in love with now passed me in the hallway like a stranger. She spoke to me only when necessary, never about anything personal. One night, I found her sitting alone in the kitchen, the lights dimmed, a glass of wine untouched in front of her. She looked up when I entered, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you hate me, Dan? I froze. What? For choosing her over you. For not standing up for you. For making you feel like you didn't matter. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say no. To comfort her. But I couldn't lie anymore. I don't hate you, I said finally. But I'm not sure I know who we are anymore. Her eyes welled up. She nodded slowly, like she already knew the answer. The next day, she moved into the guest room. The marriage was still legally intact. We still paid bills together, still watered the same plants. But the bond had unraveled, thread by thread, until there was nothing left to hold. Claire became the one person who asked me how I was, who made me feel less like a ghost and more like a man. And I clung to that, even though I knew it couldn't last. I knew when Melissa finally confronted me, it would all come crashing down. But for now, I stayed in this in-between space, half grieving, half escaping, fully aware that I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. What do you do when you've built your life on love? And then realize you were never truly chosen in return? The night Melissa finally confronted me wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. There were no screaming matches, no plates thrown, no wild accusations. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. She stood in the doorway of the living room, her arms crossed, not in anger, but in heartbreak. Her voice was calm, low, steady. How long has it been? I didn't pretend not to understand. I just stared at the floor, ashamed. Claire, she said next. Not a question. A statement. Yes, I replied. The silence that followed felt like a verdict. She sat down across from me, her eyes glassy but dry. You know what hurts most? It's not even the betrayal. It's that you stopped fighting for us. You gave up on me before I even had a chance to make things right. I didn't give up, I said, barely above a whisper. I was already gone. I just hadn't left yet. Melissa flinched, like I had slapped her. But she didn't yell. She just nodded slowly, the weight of years falling onto her shoulders all at once. We built a life together, Dan. We raised a daughter. A home. And now it's just, her voice broke. Just rubble. She got up, walked to the stairs, then stopped. I'm going to my sister's for a while. I can't be in this house with you. And then she was gone. For the first time in 20 years, I slept alone in every sense of the word. Not just without her in the bed, but without the anchor that kept me grounded through every storm. A week later, a box showed up on the porch. Inside were framed pictures. Cards. Gifts from Haley over the years. Melissa's handwriting on a note taped to the top. I thought you should have these. I didn't open the box. Not then. Maybe not ever. It was 2 months after the separation when Haley reached out. Not through Jason. Not through Melissa. Directly. Her message was short. Cautious. Dad, I know I hurt you. I know I let you down. But I'd really like to talk. If you're willing. I stared at it for hours. Part of me wanted to delete it. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to ask why I was never enough, why she chose a man who constantly failed her over the one who never did. But another part of me, the quieter part, the part that still remembered her first steps and bedtime stories, typed a reply. Okay. Let's meet. We chose a small park we used to visit when she was a kid. The one with the wooden swings and the duck pond. I arrived early. Sat on the same bench where I once tied her shoelaces. Haley showed up wearing a coat too thin for the weather. She looked tired. Older. Not in age, but in the way people age when life finally teaches them that fairy tales lie. Hey, she said softly. Hey. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind rustle through the dry leaves. Then she spoke. I didn't come to ask for anything. I owe you more than what I gave. I said nothing. I thought I needed to give my dad a moment, she continued. You know, the moment. That one time a girl gets walked down the aisle by her father. I thought maybe, if I gave him that, he'd finally stay. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. He didn't, of course. The day after the wedding, he left again. No messages. No calls. Just vanished. I closed my eyes for a moment. The pain still lived there. Even though I already knew the ending. I'm sorry, she said. For choosing him. For pushing you away. For forgetting everything you did for me. I turned to her. Looked her in the eyes. You didn't forget, Haley. You just took it for granted. She nodded, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. I know. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the wound was deeper than a single apology could reach. You called me Dad in that message, I said quietly. I meant it, she whispered. I used to believe that word meant something, I replied. That it wasn't about blood, but about who showed up. Who stayed. Who cared. It still means that, she said. I shook my head. Maybe for you. But for me, it became a title I carried until it crushed me. She didn't argue. She just looked at her hands, folded in her lap like a child waiting for punishment. I'm not asking for everything to go back to how it was, she said after a long pause. I miss you. I sighed. The kind of sigh that empties your lungs and your heart. I miss who I was, too, I said. We sat there until the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grass. When it was time to leave, she stood and gave me a hug. Not the eager, full-hearted ones from her childhood, but a tentative embrace. Like touching something fragile. I love you, Dad, she said. I closed my eyes, let the words hit me. But I couldn't say them back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The divorce went through a few months later. Melissa didn't contest it. We signed the papers in silence. No last-minute confessions. No pleas to stay. Just pens scratching across pages and 2 decades dissolving into signatures. Claire and I ended things quietly, too. There was no explosion, no betrayal. Just an understanding that we were both trying to fill a hole with something that was never going to be enough. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. It's quiet. The kind of place where no one knows your name, and no one asks. Sometimes Haley texts me. Updates about work. Photos of her dog. A new recipe she's trying. Sometimes I reply. Sometimes I don't. I'm not angry anymore. Not really. I'm just tired. But also, strangely, at peace. For the first time in my life, I'm learning what it means to live for myself. To not carry everyone else's weight on my back. To say no and mean it. To be alone without being lonely. I still have the box Melissa sent me. I haven't opened it. Maybe I never will. Because some memories are better left folded in silence, like old letters never mailed, or goodbyes that were never spoken.